10-year battle would lead to the triumph of one and the destruction of the other, and to the naming of the creatures as dinosaurs.
The gentlemen have travelled a great distance to see it, but no one can tell me what it is.
News of my work had reached the Mr. Benstead, who'd invited me to inspect a discovery he'd made in his quarry.
A valuable specimen then, Mr. Mantle.
I would like to have it for my collection. Will you take £10 for it?
I'm a man of business. I must consider the market, Doctor.
One of my achievements had been to create a market in fossil reptile remains, one which I could often ill afford.
Go around slowly, lads.
Benstead was a fossil dealer who owned a quarry in Maidstone in Kent. He'd unknowingly uncovered the first connected part of an iguanodon skeleton and was looking to make a sale. Mantell offered him £10. Benstead wanted 25. Horatio Smith raised the money and bought it for him.
A very wise investment, Dr. Mantle.
Thanks to my friend and patron.
You must be immensely gratified that the museum is attracting so many visitors.
Over 1,000 so far, I believe.
Yes, hosts of visitors. No patients. Yet.
They will come, Doctor.
Mr. Benstead. We shall do business again.
I look forward to it.
I shall now be able for the first time to reconstruct my creature in all its glory.
The new specimen allowed Mantell to make a breakthrough. In 1825, his original conception of the iguanodon as a giant lizard was based on fragments of teeth, limbs, and vertebrae. Now, for the first time, he had a whole section of the creature intact. What he glimpsed in the Maidstone slab was not a giant lizard with splayed legs, but something even more remarkable. A vast reptile with strong, upright limbs, perhaps even walking on its hind legs. The completed Maidstone iguanodon became the prize exhibit in his museum and became known as the Mantell piece. All Mantell needed now to complete the puzzle was the elusive iguanodon jaw. Mantell's prehistoric world had caught the public imagination, and he embarked on a series of lectures to generate income.
My public lectures packed Brighton Town Hall. There seemed a vast appetite for the discoveries of geology and news of the great fossil reptiles.
Mantell was now describing, for the first time, his vision of an entire ecosystem for the ancient world. One that brilliantly anticipated the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods, which lasted for 180 million years.
The ichthyosaur sometimes attained a length of from 20 to 30 feet. The plesiosaur swam on or near the surface of the water, carrying its neck like a swan, darting on its prey. The Megalosaurus must have been nearly 40 feet in length and 7 in height. The iguanodon had warts or horns on its snout. Some individuals were 60 to 100 feet in length. Reptiles were the lords of creation before the existence of the human race.
My reception in Brighton had certainly been very flattering, so far as visitors and visitings were concerned, but my professional prospects were not encouraging.
Mantel's sole source of income was his medical practice, but his deep interest in science counted against him in Brighton. Damaging gossip was beginning to circulate. People became suspicious of signing up with a doctor who seemed more committed to geology than to medicine. Days went by when Mantel sat alone, waiting for new patients who never came. He'd always known Brighton was a gamble. His grand house cost him 5 times more in rent than his house in Lewes. It could only be paid for if wealthy patients flocked in and the museum produced an income. But the patients did not come, and his patrons advised against an admission charge, as it was beneath the conduct of a gentleman. He was trapped. Mantel's discoveries had won over the scientific establishment. For the first time, the mandarins of British science saw an opportunity to take the lead from the French, who for years had dominated fossil research. Now Britain needed a hero.
So, gentlemen, the British Association for the Advancement of Science has charged us with commissioning a report on the fossil reptiles. Who is to undertake this onerous yet prestigious task?
In many ways, my friend Gideon Mantell is admirably suited. His discoveries, his collection, his publications, both scientific and popular.
But Mantell might not at this juncture be able to devote the necessary time and energy to the cause, might he?
Well, Mantell's personal circumstances are difficult. He must devote a great deal of energy to making ends meet.
Well, then perhaps we should not put distraction in his way. Your young and vigorous son-in-law, Mr. Clift, has been taking a keen interest in fossils.
He has indeed. It's your work on the Bridgewater treatise that alerted him to their significance.
Whatever his inspiration, young Owen has equipped himself brilliantly for any task in comparative anatomy.
As Hunterian Professor of Anatomy, Owen had access to all the creatures who died in the Zoological Society's menagerie. He was also presented with the rich variety of specimens that Charles Darwin had brought back from his voyage to the Galapagos. Those resources gave Owen a huge advantage in his investigations of British fossil reptiles. But beneath the brilliance, Owen displayed a ruthless streak. He was a cultured scientist, a man of charm, who loved music and literature, but who jealously denied the contribution of others to his own work. It would be these qualities of Owen's that Mantell would come to know as his fortunes in Brighton declined. Within a year of arriving in Brighton, Mantell had had 1,500 visitors to his museum, but only 3 became patients. Already, he had spent £2,000 of his own savings just to provide for his family. His second book, Illustrations of the Geology of Sussex, was even more of a business failure than his first. Only 50 copies were ever sold. The family were on the brink of bankruptcy. While the children prepared for Christmas, Mary was unforgiving in her anger and quite inconsolable.
It's coming along nicely.
For some years, she had begged him to give up geology and concentrate on medicine. Now they were paying the price. It was his reckless pride and selfish pursuit of his own interests that had brought them close to ruin.
If things do not improve, I will have to sell my collection.
Selling a job. It would allow me to buy a practice elsewhere.
His patron, Horatio Smith, eager for a return on his investment, proposed a scheme for a scientific institution based on Mantell's museum.
But where would my collection be housed?
The collection would remain where it is.
But paying customers all year round. family life would be impossible.
The institution will require most of the rooms of the house to display the collection adequately.
But where do we live? Brighton is an expensive place.
You would have a room reserved for you there as a surgery, and could no doubt find suitable local lodgings.
But what about my wife and children?
A temporary removal to a location of less exorbitant rent might be necessary.
And so, somehow, my life slipped out of my hands. It was agreed that the museum would take over the family home. The next month, Mary took her drapes, china, and furniture to lodgings in South Overs Street in Lewis, and moved in with the children.
For the first time in 20 years of marriage, Mantell was alone.
My prospects are cheerless, and I am truly wretched in my own circle, with none to bless me, and none whom I could bless.